And then Thursday came. Thursday was my actual in-hospital orientation, and that was nice. As soon as I came in, one of the assistant managers that knew me, I worked with her in the past, is like, all right, Peter, well, you've been here before. We're gonna give you the full work. So, and during my orientation, I was obviously partnered with a nurse, and we had a patient that was fresh from a mitral valve clipping. A mitral valve clipping is something that they put on patients that have mitral valve rigor to better open and seal that mitral valve, so they have better cardiac output, and the blood doesn't backflow through that mitral valve. So yeah, that happened to him. But after the procedure, a little bit during the procedure, he had a little bit of a cardiogenic shock going on. So they had to give him a balloon pump, and they gave him a Swan. And not to mention, he is also a dialysis patient of 7 years. So they gave him a dialysis, and he was on CRRT, and we were going to be the ones to start the CRRT. We're the ones that got him out of the OR. This was a night shift, so the patient got back a little bit before 6. So the day shift nurse, only thing she really did was slave the balloon pump to the monitor, set up the Swan lines, and then also start the CRT chamber. So she was priming the cartridge, which was nice because we had to do it. The hardest part about CRT is usually getting the cartridge to work for you, because any kind of obstruction of flow, any kind of air bubbles is going to alarm. You have to be really diligent and do it right, so there's no air in the system, because I'm telling you, the system goes wild if there's any kind of air bubble. But I kind of wished I was able to start the CRT myself and the cartridge, because it would give me a nice refresher on how to start the actual CRT, how to prime it, all that kind of stuff. But even though it is step-by-step directions, I'm more of a hands-on person. For me to learn how to do something properly in the correct way, I have to be able to touch it, I have to be able to move it, I have to be able to mess with it, I have to be able to actually do it. That's the way I remember best. I'm not the kind of person that reads something and, okay, I got it, and we'll see what happens. I have to get a good feel for it to be comfortable with it. So I didn't get to prime the CRT machine, but we did get to start the CRR machine. So we got our little paper with the ultrafiltration, all the pressures, the venous pressure, the atrial pressure, all that kind of stuff. So it was nice jumping into orientation and having this critically ill patient with a balloon pump, with a Swan, with a CRT machine. So this guy dialysis of 7 years, so he knew the whole protocol. He never been on CRT. He was completely with it. He was anal times 4, able to move all extremities to the best of his ability, because of course the balloon pump was in his femoral artery. So we have a brace on the leg so they don't bend it, they don't mess it up. And it also had a Swan in his IJ, so that restricted his neck mobility, and a dialysis also in his lymphedema by that balloon pump. So a lot of stuff going on. We were just turning him every couple hours, all that kind of stuff. So this was, I want to say, a perfect learning experience and almost a perfect first orientation day, minus the fact that I didn't prime the CRT. And why I say that is because this guy was completely with it. He was a super nice guy. He followed all our instructions. He asked good questions. He slept fairly well. And I was able to do my numbers on the Swan. I was able to get my numbers from the balloon pump and also do the CRT at the same time without him trying to die, in a sense, for lack of a better phrase. He wasn't trying to die on us. He was with it. He was, you could say, in a healthier state. His numbers weren't bad. So it was a nice patient to get to learn the ropes on. It was a perfect patient to get back into the routine of things, get back into the feel for things, especially working with a balloon pump, a Swan, and a CRT, which a lot of our patients have on this unit that I currently work at. And what's also nice is all the numbers were good, so we didn't have to troubleshoot anything. He was bradycardic, and he was having some PVCs, but he said he's normally bradycardic. He was like high 30s, mid 40s when he came back, but that was kind of normal because, of course, the sedation medication is still there. And back once the shift moved on, a couple hours in, he started being more like high 40s, low 50s. So that was a good change. Nobody was really worried about it. I wasn't really worried about it because that's his normal. He was just a little bit more bradycardic, you could say, because of the whole sedation that he got, all the medication that he got. So that was good. The CRT, the goal was to pull 150 mLs of fluid. And guys, we got to that goal without any kind of pressure issues, because you might notice that when you have a CRT and you start pulling fluids, you might see your blood pressure drop. This gentleman's blood pressure maintained very well the whole shift. It didn't even change. It was always anywhere between low 100s to 120, sometimes mid 90s when it's moving around. So anywhere from mid 90s to 120s, that's how much it stayed the whole shift. So we gradually started pulling. We started to go up by 25. So we started at 25, then did 50. Maybe remember this, if this is 25 or is it 50. I'm pretty sure, yeah, we started 25, then 50, then 75, 100, 125, 150. Yeah. So we slowly went up by 25. So the first hour of the CRT, we didn't pull any kind of fluids. By that, I mean, we didn't take out any fluids. So whatever he got in, we took out. So he was on, the KVOs for all those lines. He was on dobutamine, 5 milligrams. So I had to add up all those pump numbers. So he was getting, I think, like 45 mLs an hour for the KVOs and all the other fluids. So we had to pull that out the first hour. So you're pulling that out, the 45, and then plus when I did the SWAN numbers, that's another 30. So we were pulling out, I want to say 75 for the second hour. The first hour, we let it run. The second hour, we pulled whatever you gave the last hour, and that was the 30 mLs of injectate and then 45 mLs of the medication and fluid that he got. So we weren't at a not negative yet. We were doing just a zero. Whatever we put in, we're taking out. The third hour, that's when we decided to take out 25 ml. So on top of that 45, we also took out another 25. So that gives you 70 mLs of fluid that getting taken out. I didn't add the injectate that time because I didn't shoot numbers every hour. We only shoot numbers two to three times a shift, usually 3. When you get there at midnight, and then about 4 o'clock in the morning before you do your mixed units or after you do your mixed units, whichever one time allows. So I only have to account for that injectate just during the time that I push it. So the second hour, so the first hour, like I said, we just let it run. Second hour, we took out the 70, the fluids, medication, and injectate. Third hour, we took out the medication and 25. So he was then finally operating at a negative 25 in a sense. And then every hour, as long as his pressure is held, we went up by 25. Some nurses would go up by 50. It's your judgment call. If you think their blood pressure can handle it, go for it. His CVPs on the SWAN were anywhere from 9 to 13. So that does show that he has some fluids on him. Probably good to take that fluid out. And then we eventually got to that 150, I want to say maybe 6-7 hours into the shift. And ever since we got to the 150, that's where we stayed at. And we were able to get that negative 150 for the last, I want to say 4 or 5 hours of the shift, which is nice. SWAN numbers were all good. Index was good. Output was good. CVPs towards the end of the shift did start to go down by 1, but you're not pulling too much fluids, but you're pulling just enough. So textbook wise, this was a perfect scenario. CVPs going down, cardiac index staying well, cardiac output within parameters, SVR is within parameters, balloon pump was 1-to-1, is working fine. We're getting a cardiac output, CRT machine pulling out the 150. Textbook, everything was going according to plan, and that's the way it stayed. His labs in the morning were also good. We didn't have to replace any kind of electrolytes. Hemoglobin was steady. Platelets were fine. INR was fine as well. It was downtrending. So normally if you have somebody on a balloon pump, a SWAN, all this kind of stuff, usually with the balloon pump, SWAN not so much, CRT not so much, but if you have a balloon pump, you want to have this person most likely on a heparin drip. When he came on his shift, there was orders for heparin drip, but he was getting some hemoptysis. He had a lot of bleeding coming out of his IG where the SWAN was. So we got the chargers. We spoke to the nurse practitioner, and we decided to not start the heparin. We redrew the heparin. It was like, the PTT was like 160s, and then we redrew it again a couple hours later. It was still like in the 120s, and then in the morning it was, I believe, in the 60s if I remember correctly. So we didn't start the heparin because he was just bleeding from his line size. He was bleeding out of his mouth, so we felt that let's not stir the pot. His PTT is high anyways. Let's just wait a couple hours. Does look like he's going to have a clot if we decide to hold his heparin overnight, and that's what he did. And in the morning we passed it down. Dad talks about starting again. They're going to talk to our team. Most likely after I left, he probably got put on the heparin drip just for safety, all that balloon stuff and all that kind of stuff. So everything well, guys. Balloon pump was 1-2-1. Swan numbers were good. Mixed venous, if I remember correctly, I believe it was 71. It was either 60 or 71. I forget which one it was, and that's good. That's good for the patient. No complaints. We'll take that any day of the week. So that was nice. So that's how I kind of manage my night. I like CRTs because every hour you're in there doing something, so time goes by real fast. But what does suck is if your patient's crashing and you're doing CRT, because when your patient's not doing good and he's on top of that you have CRT, you feel like you're so short on time every hour because you do your numbers and try to do everything that you can to keep this person alive, and by the time you know it, it's already the next hour, you've already got your next numbers, and it's almost like you don't have a chance to sit down when you have a critically ill CRT because you're in that room so much and you're required to be there every hour to get those numbers and change up how much you're pulling and all that kind of stuff, where time just passes by so slow. It's with CRTs, it's either you're busy the whole shift, like a calm busy, or you're just sucking air for time. You're just so busy where it's like you almost don't have time for anything. But it was good. So when I was looking back at it, I was trying to figure out what's gonna be the plan for this patient. So some brainstorming things that came to mind was CRT is 1-2, not CRT, I'm sorry. Balloon pump is 1-1. He's augmentating well. His pressures are doing well. Looks good. They're probably going to try him on a trial of 1-2, see how he does. So with the 1-1 balloon pump, every time your heart beats, the balloon pump does the same thing. So when your aortic valve opens, the balloon pump closes. When your aortic valve closes, the balloon pump inflates. It deflates when the aortic valve is opened and inflates when the aortic valve is closed. Why it does that? Because imagine if the aortic valve opening and pumping blood and the balloon pump is now inflated. Where's that blood going to go? It's not going to know where to go. You're going to pop someone's aorta, you're going to kill the guy, So you have to have it beating in that synchronous way. So what happens usually is if a patient's doing good on 1-1, augmentation is good, pressures are good, they usually trial him on a 1-2. So it's not every single beat. Now it's every other beat. And the purpose of the intra-aortic balloon pump is just to increase cardiac output. You could say decrease the work of the heart in a sense, because it's helping with the pressures and the output of the outflow of blood. So you trial him on 1-2, see how he does. If he does good on 1-2, probably leave him 1-2 overnight, see how he does, all that kind of stuff. And maybe on the third night or third day, fourth day, you could pull out that balloon if you think he's doing well on 1-2. But before you pull it, probably turn it off, see how he does, just in case something happens, you got to restart it, all that kind of stuff. There's also a 1-3 setting, but I haven't seen 1-3 being used very often. It's usually if they're good on 1-2, then they're stable enough to get it taken out. With the CRT, he did very well overnight. I want to say maybe they want to keep him on CRT for maybe one more day, just to kind of make sure, check all the bases, and then probably put him on hemodialysis. This gentleman did have a fistula. Like I said, he had 7 years of dialysis, end-stage renal disease, renal failure in this sense, and he was used to it, and he was doing very well in CRT or pulling fluid, so I don't see why they would not maybe try to do some HD either the following night or just the next day, just because he's doing very well. The Swan, that's what they usually pull last, so he'll probably have that in before, all the way until either the day before he has to leave or before he gets transferred over to a unit. Because if the balloon pump is out, if he's on HD now, The Swan still gives you a lot of good information. You still see how well the lungs are working in a sense, how you could see how well the lungs and a heart are working together, because remember, with the Swan, it's going into the pulmonary artery. So this is the last point of pressure measurement is going to be your pulmonary artery. You get a wedge pressure, you get your CVP, you get your like I said, pulmonary artery pressure, all that kind of stuff is very valuable when you're looking at heart failure, when you're looking at fluid management, when you're looking at how well this patient's heart is functioning. So you want to always pull that last. We have Swans. I want to say almost every single patient in our ICU has a Swan. It's a really good measurement. You can get your mixed venous off of there. It's the last thing we always pull, because it gives us some kind of a data, and very, very valuable data. So that's how my shift went. I'm going to try to be doing at least 1 to 2 shifts a week. This is my first, when this podcast episode comes out, I'm going to be doing my first shift alone as a registry nurse. So maybe I'll touch back on it on my next episodes. But once a nurse, I guess always a nurse. It comes pretty natural to me now. I've been a nurse since 2016, 2017. So I've seen a lot of things. But I also learned a lot of things. So we'll see how this goes. I'm currently working once a week with the goal of maybe doing twice a week, and of course picking up those crucial shifts